Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these two Michigan militia groups. When our leaders speak, their words matter.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer today after learning she was being targeted by violent extremists. Federal agents arresting more than a dozen suspects, including 6 alleged members of a right-wing militia group accused of plotting to kidnap the governor, attack and kill police, and overthrow the state government to initiate a civil war. It comes as President Trump faces sharp criticism for refusing to directly condemn white supremacists. State of emergency. Hurricane Delta bearing down on Louisiana, expected to make landfall with Category 2 winds of up to 105 miles per hour. Mandatory evacuations now underway. Backing out, President Trump says he'll be a no-show for next week's debate, dismissing the decision to make it a virtual debate despite his diagnosis. Biden pushing forward, accusing the president of changing his mind every second. And in tonight's Ballot Watch, where things stand right now for voter registration. Are there places where it's too late? Alarming COVID outbreaks across the country tonight. 35 states reporting a rise in hospitalizations. Cases soaring in Wisconsin. Hospitals there near capacity. A field hospital set to open there as temperatures drop. On the front lines of the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the disputed region now under constant bombardment with global implications as superpowers jockey for position and innocent lives get caught in the middle. And representation in intelligence. The White House has shunned diversity initiatives and banned race-related training at federal agencies. We take a closer look.
Are you satisfied with the level of diversity in the CIA workforce today if you're the director?
No, I wouldn't be. And I wasn't when I walked out the door either.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Hatred, bigotry, and violence have no place in the great state of Michigan. Those forceful words from Governor Whitmer tonight after the FBI foiled a plot to allegedly kidnap her and try to overthrow the state's government. The governor blasted President Trump today for refusing to condemn white supremacy or militia groups like the 2 militia groups that allegedly were tied to the plot. And we're just getting a look at new video of one of the raids carried out by federal agents. Authorities say one of the suspects wanted 200 men to storm the Capitol building and take hostages, including the governor. Those connected are facing terror charges tonight. You're looking at some of the suspects there. Governor Whitmer has been the target of anger and protests ever since the spring after she imposed measures to stop the spread of coronavirus. Our Pierre Thomas leads us off with the latest on this wild plot.
The alleged plot nightmarish.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
The FBI and state police seen here raiding a home and detaining an individual took action after the men met this week to exchange tactical gear and to pool their money to allegedly buy explosives. The mission? Attack the governor before Election Day. Authorities claim the planning was months in the making, with the men even going to the governor's vacation home twice to conduct surveillance. 2 of the suspects allegedly had a plan to create a diversion.
Discussed detonating explosive devices to divert police from the area of the home.
This was a highly dangerous group. They were well armed, they were training, they had a plan, and they were prepared to carry out their attack.
According to the FBI, the men were apparently angry because of Governor Whitmer's restrictions during the coronavirus pandemic, including those on gyms. Tensions have been high in Michigan for weeks, with militia members, some of them armed, at one point descending on the State House last spring, intimidating lawmakers. The FBI infiltrated and wiretapped one of the groups after getting a tip that the men were allegedly plotting against police and planning to attack the state capitol in an attempt to overthrow the government. With an informant listening in, they call Whitmer a tyrant. One of the suspects saying, "Snatch and grab the governor. Just grab the expletive." They allegedly wanted to take her to a secret location in Wisconsin for a trial that would end in execution.
All of us in Michigan can disagree about politics, but those disagreements should never, ever amount to violence.
An angry Governor Whitmer today calling out President Trump.
Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these two Michigan militia groups.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
Sure,
Are you
I'm
prepared to specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir. And right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
At one point, the president tweeted there was a need to liberate Michigan.
And for more now, let's bring in Pierre Thomas. Pierre, what are you hearing about where this investigation stands, and could we see it widen?
Well, Lindsay, the investigation is ongoing. We're told it's not over. There could be more charges.
And there are 13 individuals charged from these two different groups. What do we know about the possible connections between these groups and plots?
Well, what we know is that the FBI initially found out about this plot, this alleged plot, when they heard from an informant that the group was discussing perhaps targeting state government officials and doing a government overthrow. So the FBI then sent informants to infiltrate the organization, and the investigation began.
All right, our Pierre Thomas, thanks to you. And for more now on that terrifying plot to kidnap the governor and the charges against these 13 men, we bring in Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel. Thank you so much for joining us on this busy day. Of course, today Governor Whitmer blasted President Trump, saying that he's stoking violence. Let's take a listen.
Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these two Michigan militia groups. Stand back and stand by, he told them. Stand back and stand by. Hate groups heard the president's words not as a rebuke, but as a rallying cry, as a call to action.
So do you agree with the governor's accusation there? And we should also note that the alleged plot against her began in the summer before Trump said those particular words.
Well, firstly, I absolutely do, believe that what the governor is saying is correct. Maybe his most recent message, his most recent comments just came recently. But remember, when this plot was originally hatched, remember, it's not just a plot to kidnap, put on trial, and then potentially execute the governor. It was also to take over the state legislature and to potentially commit mass murder there, as well as to execute members of law enforcement and other public officials. So this is a multi-pronged plot. Perhaps the most advanced portion of it involved this portion involving Governor Whitmer. But, all along, the president has been making various different statements, right? He talked about liberating Michigan. He certainly talked about there being good people on both sides. He has made comment after comment that instead of condemning white supremacist groups that have extremist ideologies, he has not just condoned them, I would say he has encouraged them. Were it not for us having a commander-in-chief who has provided this kind of encouragement, I don't know that we'd be in the place that we are today.
How close would you say these men actually came to carrying out their alleged plot to storm the Michigan Capitol building and kidnap the governor? And are you worried that someone else might try to do this?
Well, the first part of your question is, it seemed apparent to us as though there was an immediate nature to these plans and that these plans were to be, move forward imminently. Am I worried about other events? Absolutely, I am. There are a number of different groups out there, and this is not just a Michigan problem. This is an American problem at this point. These groups span across multiple states, and there's not just one group, there's not just a couple of them. There are dozens of them, and their overall mission is this civil unrest to create a civil war of sorts, a boogaloo, as they call it. And they're taking advantage of the fact that we have this horrific COVID epidemic, and we have civil unrest in the way of the Black Lives Matter protests, and we have so much turmoil going on in the nation right now, and it's not helped by the fact that we have a president of the United States that subscribes to anarchy, who thrives on chaos. And what it allows is for these type of extremist ideologies to thrive.
So state prosecutors charged 7 other individuals linked to the militia group, the Wolverine Watchmen. What can you tell us about this group, and does that group still pose a threat now that charges are pending?
Well, hopefully the charges against that particular group, that subsect, will have done something to diminish anything that group was planning on. But remember, they're not the only group. There are many others. Again, not just in the state of Michigan, but across state lines. And remember, their training activities actually occurred in multiple different states with multiple different groups. Our work is not done, unfortunately, but I think it's very, very important that, firstly, we take these types of groups, white supremacy groups, militia groups, extremist organizations, very, very seriously. We've had the FBI director talk extensively about how domestic terrorism poses one of the biggest existential threats that we could possibly be facing in the United States. And, you know, we have to have leadership in this country that is willing to condemn hatred. And instead of, you know, adding to this dangerous and reckless rhetoric, seeks to unite the country.
How difficult do you think that it'll be to actually prosecute these defendants, since they're mainly charged with foiled attempts to commit crimes?
I think we have more than enough evidence. And I will say this, that, you know, generally speaking, the laws, at least in Michigan, of course, when you talk about conspiracy, I mean, even just to have had these gatherings where they devised these plots verbally really would have been enough. But we're talking about a number of overt actions that were undertaken by this group. So I feel very confident in these charges and very confident that we'll be successful in this prosecution.
And lastly, I just want to get a sense as far as how concerned you are about extremist violence in Michigan and across the country, in particular as we get closer to Election Day.
Well, it is a source of serious concern, but in Michigan here, we're prepared for it. And we are working in concert with law enforcement all over the state, and that people know that it's safe and secure to vote on Election Day. And of course, fortunately here in Michigan, we have no reason absentee voting, so you don't have to vote on Election Day if you don't want to. But if you choose to do that, you will be safe and secure, and law enforcement will protect you.
Attorney General Nessel, we thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And tonight, a Category 3 hurricane is bearing down on parts of the South. Hurricane Delta making its way toward land with winds over 100 miles per hour. People in Louisiana have been preparing for this storm, even though they're still recovering from Hurricane Laura back in August. Our Rob Marciano is in Lake Charles, Louisiana for us tonight.
Time is running out for Gulf Coast families to prepare and get out. Highways are packed with evacuees ahead of a powerful Hurricane Delta.
We believe that there will be hurricane-force winds and storm surge in southwest Louisiana, in the area of our state that is least prepared to take it.
I'm already prepared because I was prepared from the last time.
Delta on track to make landfall south of Lake Charles on Friday, in nearly the same spot as Hurricane Laura, one of the most powerful hurricanes in U.S. history. Decimated communities just 6 weeks ago. The Lake Charles skyline still a sea of blue tarps.
To have this hit right now is really tough on our citizens. It's tough on our structures.
And the streets across the city littered with piles of debris.
We still don't have internet, but we do have. Finally, most of us have electricity and most of us have water. And now to be hit again, to start all over.
We met Victoria Huber right after Hurricane Laura hit. Her bridal shop is still a mess inside. She's worried another storm might break this town's back.
I think people were kind of shell-shocked, and normalcy was just coming back a little bit, and here we go again.
Boy, Lindsay, the last thing this community needs is another hurricane. Look at this business behind me. This is a tuxedo shop. It looks like it did 6 weeks ago when I was here, completely collapsed and pretty much untouched. There are piles of debris across every street in this city, and a lot of that debris will easily become airborne when you get hurricane-force winds coming through here once again, and that airborne debris, as you would imagine, will be dangerous, if not deadly. One of the reasons the mayor has asked for a mandatory evacuation, because he just wants his people to remain safe as this next storm comes through, potentially in the same spot as Hurricane Laura came through this area less than 2 months ago. Lindsay?
Rob, thanks to you. And now let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z. Ginger, this storm path is just so devastating, considering that people in this region are still picking up the pieces from another major hurricane.
I mean, right next to it. Hurricane Laura's track, just miles away, is where we anticipate this to go. But first, let me start you out, because it is not just going to be Cameron and Lake Charles. This is a pretty broad storm as far as the push of water. So where I am standing, I'm in Delcambre, Louisiana, just one of these towns, and you can see from our drone video here that is just surrounded by water. We anticipate inundation on the 9 feet range in this spot specifically, but a lot of places talking about more than 6 feet, and the storm surge is going to be a big issue. So, Lindsay, let me take you to the maps, because that satellite really shows the eye and the strong rotation. It is now headed northwest. It'll start to make its harder right turn overnight tonight, and within 24 hours, we will see a landfall of Hurricane Delta. And it appears that it would be either a 3 or a strong 2. Either way, I'm going to tell you, you're going to see big-time wind implications all the way up to Alexandria, where it looks like it'll still be a hurricane. The only good news is that it does move really fast, so rain won't sit around and, give us feet of rain, rather inches. But look at that. This is the timing. 7 p.m. tomorrow night. The surge is up to 11 feet. You have 76-mile-per-hour gusts at Cameron, Port Arthur near 60. But let me take you through time here, because even Morgan City there at 50 mile per hour, when people don't have roofs after Laura, you have more than a 40-mile-per-hour gust, you're going to have big-time problems. So look at this, too. It stays so strong that even Greenville, Mississippi could have a 40 to 60-mile-per-hour gust with it. I also want to emphasize that storm surge. So anywhere from even Galveston over to New Orleans is in the warning area, and that's because you'll have that broad push of water all day tomorrow. And so we're going to already start seeing it by tomorrow morning, especially here, Vermilion Bay down to the south. I also want to leave you with that 5 to 10 inches of rain as a possibility, and the promise that then it will move fast and get out of our hair. It's going to get picked up by the jet stream, and that is the best part of October storms, is they do usually move pretty quickly. Lindsay.
That 5 to 10 inches sounds mega. Thank you, Ginger, so much. Now to those major developments in the race for the White House, where tonight the question is, will they or won't they? Future debates between President Trump and former Vice President Biden now up in the air after the debate commission changed next week's presidential debate to a virtual format because of concern about coronavirus, leading the Trump campaign to pull out. This all comes just one night after their running mates faced off. So where does this leave the remaining debates between Trump and Biden? ABC's Mary Bruce has the latest.
Tonight, the fate of future debates is up in the air.
We don't know what the president's going to do. He changes his mind every second.
It started with a surprise announcement that next Thursday's presidential debate would be virtual. The commission saying the decision was made to protect the health and safety of all involved. The Biden campaign was open to it, but Trump almost immediately shot it down. Trump, still battling the virus, says a virtual forum is unnecessary.
A virtual debate is a joke. There's no reason. I'm in great shape.
With no clear solution, last night's vice presidential debate could be the last face-off of this campaign.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you.
Mike Pence, the head of the coronavirus task force on defense.
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
On health care, Kamala Harris took Pence to task for trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. The court set to hear a case that could invalidate the law just 1 week after the election.
If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Pence adamant they have a plan to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he couldn't say what that plan is.
And President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American.
And as Republicans try to push Judge Amy Coney Barrett through the Senate confirmation process, Pence pressed Harris to say if a Biden administration would expand the Supreme Court.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
No, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election, and it was 27 days before the election, and a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do.
Harris never giving a clear answer on packing the court. Today, the president took aim.
This monster that was on stage with Mike Pence, who destroyed her last night, by the way, but this monster, everything she said is a lie.
It's despicable. It's despicable. It's so beneath the office of the presidency. And the American people are sick and tired of it.
Mary Bruce joins us now. Mary, this all happened so quickly, and the Biden campaign has now made new plans for the night of next week's debate right here on ABC.
Yeah, Lindsay, Joe Biden will still be participating in a town hall, but instead of it being as part of a formal debate, he will be answering voters' questions right here in a town hall on ABC with our George Stephanopoulos. The president is also making other plans for next Thursday night. His team says that President Trump will be holding a campaign rally. Sources say it, of course, depends on his health, but we know that Trump has been itching to get back out on the trail, Lindsay.
Meanwhile, the vice presidential debate last night brought a bit of civility back to the race, but as you said, it didn't last long. What are both campaigns saying today as far as how their candidates fared?
Well, no surprise here. Both sides are declaring that they won the night. That is often how these things go. Speaking with Biden campaign aides and sources, they feel that Kamala Harris did a very good job in defending their positions, in putting Mike Pence on defense. They say even though Mike Pence, unlike the president, may speak in complete sentences, it doesn't mean that what he is saying is true. That's the Biden team's readout. President Trump today declared that Mike Pence won the night. They feel that he similarly did a good job defending their positions, outlining what they would do going forward. But Lindsay, it was just a remarkable, stark contrast in the tone and tenor of last night's debate compared to what we saw last week in the presidential debate. I don't think we are going to see that calm civility last much longer.
All right. Okay. Mary Bruce, our thanks to you. The debate fallout comes just 1 week after President Trump tested positive for coronavirus, and he's now declaring himself cured following his treatments over the weekend at Walter Reed. But the president's full health picture is still unknown. The White House has been leaving many questions unanswered in recent days. Our chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Karl, has the latest.
Exactly 1 week after he said he tested positive for COVID-19, the president today declared himself cured.
I think I'm better. When to a point where I'd love to do a rally tonight. I wanted to do one last night, but I think I'm better. I feel perfect. There's nothing wrong.
Although in a video released today but recorded yesterday on the South Lawn of the White House, he acknowledged he had been very sick.
I went into the hospital a week ago. I was very sick. And I took this medicine, and it was incredible. It was incredible.
In reality, we still know very little about the president's true medical condition. He says he is still on the powerful steroid dexamethasone, but his doctor has not taken questions since Monday. And the White House is still refusing to say when the president last tested negative, something that is critically important in determining who he may have infected, or even whether he already had the disease during his debate last week with Joe Biden.
When was the president's last negative test? I can't reveal that at this time. The doctors would like to keep it private.
But there is no reason the president can't release that information himself. The president today implied he was infected on September 27th at an event with families of fallen service members at the White House.
I met with Gulf Star families. I didn't want to cancel that. They're telling the story of their son who just died, or daughter, or husband. And I can't back up, Maria, and say, give me room. I want room. Give me 12 feet. Stay 12 feet away when you talk. They come within an inch of my face sometimes. They want to hug me and they want to kiss me. And they do. It's obviously dangerous.
The event with Gold Star families was after the Rose Garden event with Amy Coney Barrett, but before the president traveled to Cleveland for the debate with Biden, and to a rally in Minnesota, and later to a fundraiser in New Jersey. According to a government memo obtained by ABC News, 34 people connected to the White House have tested positive. And we've learned the head of White House security has been hospitalized with COVID-19 since the end of September. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell revealed today that he has not been to the White House in over 2 months because he has not been comfortable with the steps taken there to prevent the spread of the virus.
I haven't actually been to the White House since August the 6th because my impression was their approach to how to handle this was different from mine and what I insisted that we do in the Senate, which is to wear a mask and practice social distancing.
McConnell, it sounds like, is for masks. And Jonathan Karl joins us now from Washington. John, what do we know about the White House's outreach to those Gold Star families and whether they could have been exposed to the virus?
Well, we've learned that the White House did reach out to the head of the group that brought the Gold Star families to the White House for that event shortly after the president tested positive. And we've also learned that the head of that group then contacted each and every one of the families. And I am happy to report, Lindsay, that none of the Gold Star families have either tested positive or displayed any of the symptoms consistent with coronavirus.
That's some very good news tonight when we need it. And the president, though, he's insisted he's feeling great, barring a change in his condition. Do you think that we actually could see him back out on the campaign trail soon?
I do. The president mentioned this morning that he actually wished he had already been out on the campaign trail. I am told that they plan to have him back out there on Monday, possibly in Pennsylvania, a rally in Pennsylvania. And we know the campaign has already gone ahead and announced the rally Thursday on the night that would have been the debate.
John, I don't know if you know, but are they saying that he'll be back out there even if he has not yet tested negative for coronavirus?
They haven't been exactly specific on this, but what they've pointed out is that the CDC guidelines are that you should not be out exposing yourself to anybody until at least 10 days after you either tested positive or started to display symptoms. So Monday would actually be 12 days since the White House told us that the president said he tested positive.
Okay. All right. Jonathan Karl, thanks so much, as always, for your reporting.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And for more on the race for the White House, let's bring in ABC News political analyst Matthew Dowd. So first, Matt, let's just break down last night's debate a bit. Far different affair from what we saw last week. What was your biggest takeaway between Pence versus Harris as far as who helped their campaign the most?
Well, hey, Lindsay. Yeah, much different, obviously, in tone and the way it was conducted, and with some interruptions, but few, and a little over-talking in some of the questions. My takeaway was it was a debate that the Trump campaign had to win and win overwhelmingly. They didn't. All the polls out that we've seen so far, including our own from 538, shows that actually Senator Harris won the debate, and the perceptions of her went up. The perceptions of Mike Pence didn't change. So to me, when you're behind in a race and you don't have many moments left, you have to win. And if you don't win, even a neutral stance, which last night wasn't, is bad. And so it's another check mark for the Biden campaign, is one more big thing down. And we move forward to whatever we're going to see next.
And what will we see next, do you think, if you pull out your crystal ball? I mean, as we look ahead to the fallout over the next debate, which now looks like it won't happen as planned after the president said that he would not participate virtually, despite still having the coronavirus, at least at this particular moment. What do you make of how this is playing out and how each campaign is handling this situation?
Well, to me, I mean, one of the things we all have to consider is that, November 3rd is the last day of voting. It's not Election Day anymore. Election Day is going on right now. And as of right now, 6 million people have already voted. And so every day that goes on in this race with Biden with a lead means he's banking votes while he has a lead. And that's hugely problematic. And I think the way this latest debate fiasco is unfolded is all to the benefit of Joe Biden. Donald Trump backs out of a remote debate, which I still don't understand, since all of us and our children are practicing most of what they're doing in their life remotely. Why the president can't do that, who seems able to call into interviews, but he can't seem to be able to do a remote debate. I know we're going to have a town hall. It looks like ABC may have a town hall instead, which is great that for us and for the country, that they'll be able to ask Joe Biden questions. So the only thing left right now that, to me, unless some unforeseen event happens, which, as we know, we've had a few years of unforeseen events, is the last debate on the 22nd, which looks like both so far have agreed to, though you never know, that could change. As you know, I said last night why that debate was so important, especially to Mike Pence and Donald Trump, is it could be the last moment, and there was 50 million plus viewers at it. And so not knowing what's ahead, and while people are voting, I think the Biden campaign right now is in the driver's seat right now. And the Donald Trump campaign has to figure out some way to catch up without many big moments left.
But the sense that you get, I mean, do you think that we are going to see another debate? I know that you're saying perhaps that one just, I guess it's a little bit over a week before Election Day. But do you think that we're going to see that? And then how much does that even matter at that point, that late in the game? I mean, are there that many undecideds that it would make a difference?
Very good question, Lindsay. And I think that the closer we get and the more people vote, my guess is by the time we get to the 22nd, which is when the potential next debate is, 25 million people will have voted, or maybe even 30 million people will have voted. Early voting will be occurring in almost every single state by then. So it's very late in the game. There's not many undecideds left. Donald Trump could win every single undecided vote at this point and still lose the election pretty badly because Joe Biden's over 50% in most every state that he needs to win and 53, 54% nationally. And so he has to convert Biden supporters back to him. And I don't know if a last debate, I mean, you never know, but usually the third debate, everyone I've seen and everyone I've been involved in is usually neutral territory because people have made up their mind, they're done. We're going to one last check. Okay, he did what I want him to do. Done. I'm done. And it's usually the lowest rated of all debates. So it's the only moment left. Though, as I said, the most predictable thing that we've seen over the last few years is the unpredictable. And so 26 days left. I'm sure we're going to see some unpredictable events that could affect the race.
Anything could happen. All right, Matt Dowd, thanks so much.
Thanks.
And now to the country's COVID crisis here in New York City. New lockdowns in some neighborhoods have triggered protests, and there are also hotspots in the upper Midwest and also the Plains. 35 states are now seeing a rise in hospitalizations. ABC's Stephanie Ramos has the latest.
Tonight, strict new coronavirus lockdowns taking effect in hard-hit neighborhoods in New York City, sparking outrage. Hundreds of protesters demonstrating in Brooklyn, starting fires, even assaulting a journalist. City and state officials taking urgent action to crush flare-ups in so-called red zones, shutting down non-essential businesses, limiting capacity at houses of worship to a maximum of 10 people, and closing more than 300 schools.
Did any of us sign up for perpetual lockdown forever? I think not.
Tonight, hospitalizations on the rise in 35 states. In Wisconsin, the state set to open this 530-bed field hospital next week.
Every region in Wisconsin has hospitals reporting current and imminent staffing shortages.
In New Mexico, the virus infecting 6 members of one family, including Leo Lugo. Relatives say the beloved special education teacher tragically died Sunday.
Look, it took my brother, and it took him only a week to go.
Our thanks to Stephanie. And when we come back, the horrific allegation: did a father refuse the attempts to help free his 1-year-old from a hot car because he didn't want to break the windows? We're on the front lines as tensions continue to escalate between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Could this become a regional war? But up next, could the president's decision to end racial sensitivity training in federal agencies pose a national security risk? Why some are saying yes. Stay with us.
Powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready? Drop in and explore. These are your worlds. Wherever and whenever you want them, you'll find them all here on Disney Plus.
Now, with so much on the line, ABC News, America's #1 news, is right there for you live on Hulu with stories of strength, stories of hope. Because now, when it matters most,
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news.
Hulu has live news. And that news is ABC News.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
ABC News Live on Hulu.
Watch the news you need.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Streaming to all Hulu subscribers right now.
At last week's debate, President Trump doubled down on his recent decision to end racial sensitivity training aimed at addressing white privilege and racial bias at federal agencies. The move is reverberating across our government, including the intelligence community, where top officials say a persistent lag in diversity and inclusive culture is threatening our national security. Here's Devin Dwyer.
Their mission is to blend in and understand complex threats, from the streets of Baghdad and Kabul to the high-tech hubs of China and nuclear sites in Iran. A challenge for the CIA, which is disproportionately white.
Diversity and inclusion training is extremely important.
Retired CIA officer Daryl Blocker spent decades gathering intelligence overseas and helping recruit future American spies here at home.
Are you satisfied with the level of diversity in the CIA workforce today if you're the director?
No, I wouldn't be. And I wasn't when I walked out the door either.
The CIA has one of the least diverse workforces of any agency in federal government, despite the fact that its mission is to analyze intelligence in dozens of languages and understand the nuances of diverse cultures.
It's a practical equation. It's not even about right or wrong. It's about what they need. Our adversaries and enemies are not going to be privileged white suburbanites walking around the streets of Southern California.
Douglas London, a 34-year CIA veteran who was stationed around the world, says systemic racism exists in the agency.
Do you consider this a national security concern?
It's not a new one. It's been existing, but I think it's been complicated by the political tone set by the White House.
The White House denies there is deep-seated racial bias and white privilege, shunning diversity initiatives and outright banning race-related trainings at federal agencies, including CIA.
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane.
But current and former leaders in the intelligence community, including members of both parties, say a lack of diversity could hurt the effectiveness of America's spies. Minorities make up just over a quarter of the intelligence community workforce, according to a new report, well below the level of representation across the federal government and the civilian labor force overall. The CIA declined to provide figures for the agency itself, but a declassified 2015 report found just 10.8% of its leaders were people of color.
What was shocking to me was just the lack of representation of diversity in its senior ranks especially, but across the board within the IC.
Congresswoman Terry Sewell of Alabama, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, has seen marginal improvement in diverse hiring and promotion in recent years, but says it's not enough.
There's a lot of lip service that goes on with talking about diversity and not enough action, intentional action, especially when you think about the fact that there are some that come in and that get diverted to administrative roles and not into mission critical.
Ladies and gentlemen.
The CIA tells ABC News its diversity strategy is gaining momentum.
You can play a role protecting our nation.
Using its first ever national streaming ad to appeal to young minority potential recruits. But after years of similar efforts, some wonder whether this one will be any more effective. The initiative has even become fodder of late-night comedians.
Why is the CIA making recruitment ads? If you're such good spies, surely you already know who you should hire.
Hi, Trevor.
The CIA's talent acquisition chief, Sharonda Dorsey, has been leading the charge to set the record straight, responding to The Daily Show's Trevor Noah on Instagram.
We had some great laughs with you, but we decided to stick with our fact-based version. We have a global mission. So it is important for us to reach Americans from all walks of life.
In a statement to ABC, the CIA says fostering diversity and inclusion is now a key requirement for promotion, and that all officers are trained to create and maintain an inclusive workplace. CIA Director Gina Haspel, the first woman in that job, has said it's a top priority.
I want every officer to have equal opportunities to succeed.
But building a more inclusive agency of spies and analysts has been slow going. Former CIA officials say one of the biggest barriers remains stigma from the agency's controversial history of alleged human experimentation, torture, and assassinations.
It's a double-edged sword. The mystique is good. It helps us that people think that we can do these things, but it also hurts us when they think we're doing things that we're not.
As the nation reckons with race, members of Congress are promising to keep the pressure on.
More accountability by giving us the numbers of ethnic minorities broken down by ethnicity, those are all classified. Therein lies the problem.
A demand for accountability and renewed commitment, as diverse U.S. intelligence agencies are as important as ever to meet the challenges of a changing world.
When I walked in the door in 1990, there were 0 examples of a division chief. When I walked out the door, Asians, Latinx, Black like myself, division chief.
So you saw progress?
I saw a lot of progress. But I don't know if it's sustainable progress. The agency needs to understand that if you're going to invest in some minority communities, you have to be there all the time.
For ABC News Live, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington.
Our thanks to Devin for that. And still ahead here on Prime, the investigation now underway after a small plane crashes while trying to take off, and how bystanders who tried to help the survivors ended up getting injured too. The building engulfed in flames, and the daring rooftop rescues will show you those harrowing moments. And the early voting numbers are in. How many have exercised their right to vote so far? But first, our tweet of the day. Los Angeles prosecutors announcing charges against singer Tory Lanez. Police say that he shot at the feet of fellow rap artist Megan Thee Stallion, injuring her.
The waters of the Outer Banks are unforgiving and full of riches for the fishermen who dare. The best of the Northern Fleet are heading south, but the locals know where the giants lie. And if you thought the waters were unforgiving, wait until the battle begins. Wicked Tuna Outer Banks. New episodes Sundays at 9 on National Geographic.
This is Paris. She said she suffered traumatic abuse while in school in her stunning documentary. Now she's trying to close the school and has some high-profile support from Paris Jackson and others. Tomorrow, Paris Hilton, exclusive and live, about what happened to her and what she'll do next, only on GMA. The coronavirus. Everyone has concerns. And tomorrow, Dr. Jennifer Ashton is here, helping you better understand it all, helping you protect yourself and your family. Your questions answered tomorrow
on Good Morning America.
Welcome back, everybody. And now to voting in what's turning out to be an election like no other. Instead of Election Day, it's more like Election Month, as an unprecedented number of American voters are casting their ballots early and by mail. We take a closer look by the numbers. We are still 26 days away from Election Day, and an unprecedented 6.6 million Americans have already voted, according to election expert Michael McDonald. 1.1 million ballots have been cast in Florida alone, the state with the most early votes so far. More than 70 million voters have requested mail-in ballots, and in the states that report party affiliation, 22 million registered Democrats asked for mail-in ballots, but only 13 million registered Republicans did so. Democrats are also returning those ballots at higher rates than Republicans, which is a reversal from past elections. In 2016, 21% of all voters mailed in their ballots. This year, experts predict 40 to 50% of all voters nationwide will cast their ballots by mail, in a process that's already well underway. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime. The brewing war, how the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan could become a regional conflict. News tonight on the Tesla car. Remember that car that was launched into space? Where is it now? And they stood by the side of the vice president and Senator Harris. But what do we know about the second spouse candidates? But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
The team with the highest card total could be leaving with $100,000.
To shop.
Bam, bam, bam.
Till you drop.
Oh, mommy down.
Leslie Jones hosts Supermarket Sweep. Premieres Sunday, October 18th on ABC.
It was a fairy tale love story.
He was the closest to Prince Charming.
That George Clooney feel, sexy. She was swept off her feet.
He would record these video love messages to me.
I love you very much.
Then he proposed, planning an A-list wedding. And
we're getting married by the book. Oh. No, I'm not joking. We're getting married by the Pope.
But it's complicated.
What if this is all a lie?
I'm Whoopi Goldberg, and this is The Con.
Premieres Wednesday on ABC.
It's being called the most consequential election of a lifetime, the most important vote. And with so much on the line, it demands the most straightforward, news-making, real answers, the most informed voices from all sides. The countdown is on to the vote. What will our future look like? ABC's This Week with George. It all plays out right here every Sunday.
The most consequential week yet of this hyper-political year.
Right as you get closer to casting your vote every Sunday on ABC.
Federal and state authorities say a plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has been thwarted, the elaborate plan leading to the arrests of militia members.
When I put my hand on the Bible and took the oath of office 22 months ago, I knew this job would be hard. But I'll be honest, I never could have imagined anything like this.
6 men arrested Wednesday night and accused of training, gathering weapons, and tactical gear for months with the goal of kidnapping and then killing Governor Whitmer before Election Day.
Even allegedly constructing and testing improvised explosive devices to target law enforcement so they could attack the Capitol in Lansing and destroy a bridge. 7 others allegedly linked to the militia group Wolverine Watchmen, also facing charges under Michigan's Anti-Terrorism Act.
The individuals in custody are suspected to have attempted to identify the home addresses of law enforcement officers in order to target them, made threats of violence intended to instigate a civil war.
According to investigators, suspect Adam Fox said he wanted 200 men to storm the building to take hostages, including Governor Whitmer, and would try her for treason. They'd then use Molotov cocktails to destroy police cruisers.
Whitmer called the suspects sick and depraved, vowing the suspects would be brought to justice and putting the blame on President Trump's rhetoric.
Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups.
Hurricane Delta barreling toward the Gulf Coast after pummeling Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 2 storm. 100-mile-per-hour winds peeling off roofs, washing up boats, now gaining strength as forecasters project it heading toward Louisiana. Weary residents boarding up trying to once again prepare for another storm that could be heading their way.
When you have to deal with it every single day, and I mean every day, without a break, right, it does wear you down.
Lake Charles under mandatory evacuation. Thousands there still recovering from Hurricane Laura just 6 weeks ago.
In Palm Beach County, Florida tonight, authorities say a small plane went off the runway into a pond during takeoff. 9 people hospitalized, including 2 bystanders who've been trying to help.
Charges filed in the hot car tragedy in Las Vegas. A 1-year-old girl died after being locked in a vehicle for about an hour. Her father reportedly refused several attempts to free her, allegedly telling police he didn't want to break any windows because he couldn't afford the repairs. He's now charged with child abuse. It was a sight to behold and hear. Elon Musk hurtling his bright red Tesla Roadster into space with the Falcon Heavy rocket. Starman the mannequin at the wheel. Destination, Mars. Now, over 2 years later, SpaceX confirms Starman has just cruised past Mars. No time for a bathroom break. This trip is just getting started. Starman expected to pass by Earth in early November. Then scientists at the University of Toronto believe the Tesla will drift through space for the next 10 million years before it crashes into Earth, Venus, or the Sun.
Welcome back, everybody. Voter registration deadlines are quickly approaching across the country, or in some cases have already passed. So in tonight's Ballot Watch, we wanted to give you an idea of where things stand in your state. And the good news, in more than 35 states, you can still register to vote in the presidential election. These are the 13 states where, unfortunately, if you have not registered already, you're out of luck. That includes the battleground states of Ohio, Georgia, Texas, and Florida, which had their registration deadlines this week. In Florida, as we reported earlier Earlier this week, the deadline was extended an extra day after the voter registration website crashed on the last day due to high traffic. And that's an important reminder in the 7 states that have deadlines coming up in the next week to not wait until the last day if you want to register to vote. The deadlines in New York and Oklahoma are tomorrow. Delaware is Saturday, and voter registration ends next week in Virginia, West Virginia, Kansas, and New Jersey. For the 21 states and D.C. on this list, you can register as late as Election Day to vote. That includes the key swing states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Be sure to visit your individual state's voter registration page if you have any more questions about your state's process and deadlines. Hundreds of people were forced to evacuate after a terrifying high-rise fire in South Korea. Take a look at these scenes. Firefighters believe it all began on the 12th floor of the 33-story building. The entire building went up in flames, forcing dozens to be rescued from the rooftop. More than a dozen people were also hospitalized. It's a conflict that you may not know much about, yet it's been happening on and off for decades. Armenia and Azerbaijan, 2 former Soviet territories, have been locked in conflict for 32 years over a piece of disputed territory. There was a stalemate until recently, and now there's a chance that world powers may be thrust into this crisis that has already resulted in hundreds of deaths. Patrick Reevell is on the ground there and brings us this report.
A decades-old conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia reignited. This is what life has been like in Nagorno-Karabakh's capital Stepanakert for more than a week. Air raid sirens and near constant bombardment. Armenia and Azerbaijan are fighting a large-scale war along the borders of the disputed region. Now a flashpoint that risks triggering a larger international crisis.
Let them stop this war. I don't want my son to be fighting there. I want all mothers to have their sons returned to them. I ask everyone, help us.
The military conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh is one of the world's oldest. The mountainous region is claimed by both Armenians and Azerbaijanis. As the Soviet Union collapsed in the late 1980s, ethnic Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh sought to join the new Armenian state. The resulting 6-year war killed over 20,000 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. Despite a ceasefire brokered by Russia in 1994, the conflict was never resolved. Nagorno-Karabakh is now populated and controlled by Armenians, but is internationally still recognized as Azerbaijani territory. For 30 years, the conflict has regularly flared up. But there's been no fighting like this since the 1990s. Nearly 2 weeks ago, Azerbaijan launched a major offensive and has said it wants to force Armenia to withdraw entirely from Nagorno-Karabakh.
This is unique and this is very large in scales. We never had, since 1994, this is the first time we have a war with this large, scale.
Already hundreds of troops and dozens of civilians have been killed. Right now, only one road is open to Nagorno-Karabakh from Armenia's capital, Yerevan. Driving into the mountains, signs of the war come towards us. As we're driving closer to Nagorno-Karabakh, we keep seeing ambulances coming past us. They're all coming from the front with the wounded. Getting closer to the border, we meet a group of men in new cars. They're donating them to the war effort.
It's for our motherland. We're giving these cars to our friends so that they can use these cars, use them in wartime, to carry the wounded, to bring food to those places that need it.
The war has triggered a huge mobilization among Armenians, people signing up to fight, donating food, money and basic necessities. And there is a need for them. So far, fighting is largely confined to Nagorno-Karabakh and nearby areas, but Azerbaijan is indiscriminately bombarding the enclave. Nuna Gabrielian fled her town 4 days ago with 9 grandchildren. Their home now is this kindergarten, along with 7 adults.
This is our bedroom.
They sleep in the same room and eat in the classroom.
All of them, the bigger ones, this is already the second time they've seen this. I appeal to the world. I ask you to stop it. It's enough. I've already seen war 3 times. I can't do this. I don't know where else to turn to, where I can hide these children so they don't see this bombing.
Hundreds of people forced to flee are living in hotels in this town. Armenian forces have retaliated, striking cities in Azerbaijan. The United States, Russia and France have called for an immediate ceasefire, but that is complicated by a new factor in the conflict. Turkey is openly backing Azerbaijan far more aggressively than it has in the past. Syrian fighters from Turkish-backed rebel groups are now allegedly being sent to Azerbaijan to fight. Turkey and Azerbaijan deny that. But in this refugee camp in northern Syria, two fighters told ABC News they were recruited by Turkey.
ضد أرمينيا. فانطلبنا اللواء.
The Turkish government asked the Free Syrian Army to intervene in Azerbaijan. Our battalion was asked to provide 200 to 300 people to go to Azerbaijan. They told me I would earn a salary between $1,300 to $1,800.
And then there's Russia, a formal military ally of Armenia, but it's supplying weapons to both sides. There are fears that the tangled geopolitics of this conflict could prolong the war, making it more bloody. For now, the goodbyes continue, families sending off their loved ones to fight once again.
My younger son came home wounded, and now I'm sending my older son to war so that he can protect my motherland, our Armenians, so that we all can live calmly and well. Let those Azerbaijanis and Turks leave. They're killing them. You understand?
In Armenia's capital, they're burying the dead and preparing to receive more casualties. They're digging fresh graves, 3 backhoes working at once. Patrick Revel in Yerevan, Armenia, for ABC News Live.
Our thanks to Patrick for that. We'll be right back in a moment with a look at the lives of the next potential second spouse.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want.
ABC News Live.
Streaming everywhere, right to you. ABC News Live. It's that easy to go there.
We move up to the vehicle. He detonates a bomb.
The heroes who stopped the killer, who held the city of Austin hostage for 19 days.
It's a tripwire. All hands on deck.
The clues, the Home Depot video, that truck, and the agent who connected the dots.
It was exactly the vehicle that we were looking for.
Inside the investigation,
Vans made contact.
the takedown of the bomber. Now streaming on Hulu.
It's being called the most consequential election of a lifetime, the most important vote. And with so much on the line, it demands the most straightforward newsmaking, real answers, the most informed voices from all sides. The countdown is on to the vote. What will our future look like? ABC's This Week with George. It all plays out right here every Sunday.
The most consequential week yet of this hyper-political year.
Right as you get closer to casting your vote every Sunday on ABC.
It was a fairy tale love story. She was swept off her feet.
He would record these video love messages to me.
I love you.
She thought she found true love.
But it's complicated. I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con.
Premieres Wednesday on ABC.
Whoever wins the presidency in just weeks will become the oldest to ever do so. And that has put some renewed focus on the vice presidential candidates, as we certainly saw in last night's debate. But what about their spouses, or collectively, shall we call them Spice? Rachel Scott has more on the second lady and the man who could just become the country's first ever second gentleman.
Doug Emhoff and Karen Pence embracing their spouses at the end of Wednesday's vice presidential debate. The two may be on opposing sides, but sharing a common goal to help their other halves win the election. And they're hitting the trail hard. Karen Pence has been by her husband's side through runs for Congress and governor of Indiana. The mother of 3 spent 25 years as an elementary school teacher, an award-winning watercolor artist. She advocates for mental health art therapy and relief for military families. Her son Michael is a Marine pilot and son-in-law in the Navy.
It is imperative that we support our military spouses.
Over the past year, Karen Pence has been wading further into one of the most contentious campaign seasons in modern history, unveiling a new Twitter account with a direct-to-camera appeal to voters.
Now is not the time to stop the momentum. We are just getting started.
Trading in her business casual look for sleek pantsuits and streamlined skirts. She was center stage at this year's Republican National Convention.
100 years ago, women secured the right to vote. So let's vote, America.
She's going to fight for you. And she's going to fight for you day in and day out.
And while his wife's candidacy has already made history, Doug Emhoff could be making a little history himself as the first second gentleman. Telling Marie Claire in a recent profile, there's a former role of the VP spouse. I think that's all working, and that's not something I'd be trying to upend. As far as using the platform this position would afford him, he envisions approaching it like I do anything, and plans to talk about fairness and talk about justice and talk about equality. Just try to lead by example. Referring to himself as her hubby in his Twitter bio, Emhoff has emerged as the ultimate Harris hype man. Taking a leave of absence from his law firm, his days are devoted to making sure the Biden-Harris ticket goes all the way to the White House. Recently campaigning in key swing states like Florida, Ohio, and Texas.
We want to show this country and we want to show the world enough is enough.
Our thanks to Rachel for that. And before we go tonight, our image of the day. This lone spectator at the French Open watching the semifinal match of the tournament all alone. Such is life in 2020. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and good night.